My name is Anna, my friend Lena, and I had been looking forward to spring breaks for a week. We were two Brock College juniors desperate for a change of scenery, but neither of us could afford the classic trip to Mexico or Hawaii. So we were kind of restricted to somewhere in the continental us, preferably not too far away. So when we found a cheap Airbnb near Charleston Historic District, we booked it immediately. 5 nights of food, bars, and exploring. It felt like exactly what we needed. Plus, it was my first spring break above the age of 21. So I wouldn't have to constantly stress about which places were likely to snatch my fake ID. By the third night, we'd settled into our routine sightseeing during the day, hopping between restaurants and bars in the evening. I'm not a heavy drinker, and neither is Lena, so we were getting more enjoyment out of just experiencing what the city had to offer. Early that evening, we ended up at this tiny seafood spot. We had found online fried shrimp, hush pay, sweet tea, that sort of vibe. The place honestly felt like a hidden gem. And I was impressed that Lena had been able to sift through all the touristy stuff to find something a bit more authentic. The good vibe didn't last though. We were halfway through our late lunch when my phone buzzed. I glanced down, it was a number. I didn't recognize the message, just said, "Hey." I stared at it for a few seconds before showing Lena. Asking her if she knew the number, she looked at my phone and said she didn't. I figured it was just a scam or something, but usually those scam texts say more then just, "Hey, maybe it was a wrong number." I typed back a quick, "Who is this?" and went back to it in Lena. And I was laughing about something silly when another text from that same number popped up on my phone. It said, "Look outside." That one made me pause. I glanced toward the window next to our table, expecting to see someone waving or messing with me. Maybe one of my friends from school had coincidentally taken a trip to Charleston at the same time we had, but there was nothing, just a street with people walking by like normal. I told Lena someone was messing with me, and she agreed, saying it was probably just a prank. I laughed, but the thought of that really creeped me out. None of my friends were really the type to do that, but I guess it could have been some guy who had previously hit on me and was bored or something. Up until that point, the whole thing still felt harmless. But then another message came through just a few minutes later. It said one word, "Anna," that stopped me cold. If this person knew my name, it definitely wasn't wrong number, probably not a scam. Either. I gasped, and she Lena, and she reminded me about something I had completely forgotten about on our first day in Charleston, Lena. And I had entered one of those giveaways at a local cafe. It was one of those win a free meal promotions where they ask for your name and number and a few other things. It had completely slipped my mind, but as soon as Lena brought it up, that's all I could think about. I hadn't given my number to anyone in Charleston either, so it made sense. I told Lena whoever was texting me probably had her number as well, and the two of us kind of freaked each other out. Dinner wasn't as fun. After that, in all honesty, I felt too out in the open. We paid the bill and decided to shake it off. At a rooftop bar across town, it was packed and seemed like the type of place that attracted a younger crowd. So it was a no-brainer about a few drinks. I was starting to loosen up, and Lena and I were enjoying ourselves again, but of course that didn't last long. I got another message from that number, but this one was so much worse. It said that a nice red jacket. I went stiff. I was wearing a red jacket. In fact, I was one of the only people there who was even wearing red. I looked around frantically, but it was useless. The place was crowded, filled with people laughing and drinking, but no one was looking at me. At least not obviously. I showed Lena the message, and she said we should leave. The two of us started making our way back to the Airbnb as cautiously as possible. I kept glancing around behind us to make sure we weren't being followed, and we weren't. By the time we got inside, I bolted the door and double checked every lock. We shut the curtains and locked all the windows, trying to convince ourselves we were just overreacting. But an hour after we got back to the Airbnb, we started getting hungry, but neither of us wanted to leave. We ordered Uber Eats instead, picking some random burger place a few blocks away. I always had my Uber Eats setting set to leave at door by default. As I had a really bad experience with the delivery driver a while back that I don't want to talk about. The estimated wait time was 50 minutes, which felt like forever. We distracted ourselves by watching some dumb reality show, trying to shake off the lingering paranoia from either for a little while. It worked eventually. There was a knock at the door. I looked down at my phone and saw a notification from Uber Eats saying the driver was arriving. I was confused, so normally Uber Eats would send a photo when the food was dropped off. So I wasn't too sure why our driver had knocked on the door. I looked at Lena and she looked equally confused. I got up and checked the peephole, and yeah, it was a random bulky looking dude in a hoodie holding our bag of food. He just looked like a normal Uber Eats driver. I watched for a few moments, expecting him to set our food down and leave, but he just stood there. After a while, he knocked on the door again and said out loud, "Uber Eats for Anna." I said thank you and that he could just leave it out there, but he still didn't move. There was a long pause, and then he finally said I needed to come out and sign something real quick. That wasn't right. I exchanged a knowing glance with Lena. Something was very wrong. About this, she immediately pulled out her phone and dialed 911, mouthing just in case to me. I wasn't going to argue. Looking back, speaking out loud to that guy probably wasn't a smart choice because after that, he started knocking on the door more aggressively. He kept saying that he had other deliveries to make and that he just needed a quick signature, but I knew that was BS. When I didn't respond, he started juggling the doorknob. When it didn't budge, he started banging on the door, shouting my name. I honestly thought he was going to kick the door down, and I don't think Lena and I would have been able to fend him off had he done so. But when I heard a sigh in the distance and the banging on the door stopped, I heard the bag of food fall to the porch, followed by rapid footsteps running away from the house. There was quite the commotion on our yard. We heard officers yelling and sirens blaring. Lena and I rushed to one of the windows just in time to see two officers tackling that guy in the hoodie a few houses over. We didn't dare go outside, but we watched as they put him in cuffs and escorted him to the back of one of their cars. The officers then came to our house and we told them everything, including the text I had been receiving. By some miracle, one of the officers had been patrolling just 2 blocks from our Airbnb when Lena placed the call, which explained how they showed up so quickly. Thankfully, we were in a very happening area. They took our statements and told us we'd be hearing from them soon. It turned out our cafeteria was spot on. He worked there. He had taken photos of the giveaways forms and had been following us since that afternoon, probably because we had written down that we were just visiting for spring break and that made us easy targets or something. The cops' running theory was that he had followed us home from the bar and waited outside our house when the Uber Eats driver pulled up. He must have convinced him to hand over the food, maybe pretending to be my boyfriend or something. The guy also apparently had a criminal record, which made the situation even worse. We were dealing with someone with a very violent history, and that was downright terrifying. The rest of the trip kind of sucked, and when it got time to leave Charleston, I was relieved. I still don't know what that guy's plan was. Maybe he thought if we opened the door, he could push his way in and do God knows what. Either way, I try not to think about what would have happened if Lena hadn't called the police when she did, or even worse, if the police hadn't been able to get there in time.